I'm glad you came in from the cold. You found a nice place for a warm lunch. Thank you for being here for our December meeting. We've got a great speaker for you today. We're glad she's here. She almost had a head-on crash with a motorized wheelchair. But she did survive, and she's here to talk about it today. So we have another special guest who is graduating today. She is in the young digital generation from State College of Florida. Elizabeth, congratulations. Please stand up. She is graduating from State College of Florida. She's one of our former scholarship recipients, and she's going to have a great career. And you know how I can tell? Because when Hayley walked in, she right away grabbed her elbow and wants to sit next to Hayley, and that's the way to do it. That's the way I was 100 years ago. You find the person you can learn from who's in the business, and good for you. This is a full room of people who can teach you a lot, but you're next to one of the best. So congratulations. Okay, also thanks to METV, because this will be broadcast for the next 4 weeks on METV, just as the Gail Sierens address was, and the one before that as well. So great to have the folks from Manatee County watching this luncheon. And if you want to learn more about the club, by the way, it's broadcastersclub.com. Well, certainly a busy time on the news. I'm sure, how many of you saw the news about the triple murder locally? Isn't that awful thing? Hayley and I were working that last Thursday, and yes?
I was going to say, I can commend you guys for the work you did under that set of circumstances at that time of day on that day. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Oh, please. Thank you for saying that. Well, I was just going to give a little anecdote, and it's not a joke. It's just something you might, those of you who have been out in the field covering stories, you know, we were rushed out to this scene, which is not too far from here, the Bayshore Baptist Church. And there I was among about a dozen reporters and about 20 law enforcement officers, different agencies, helicopters in the sky. And the adrenaline is rushing. I'm live in 10 minutes. Get all the facts ready, get ready. And I looked over. Again, this isn't a joke. This is a real life story. I looked over and there's a fellow in a white van with the door open. And I thought, what is that guy doing over there? And I was kind of distracted by he was sobbing uncontrollably. You get so swept into these stories that you forget there's a tragedy going on here. Something very sad just happened. And sometimes when you're a journalist, you're so swept into the facts and the figures and the timing that you forget what's actually going on. And again, there's no punchline coming. Just really struck me that that image of that fellow, so broken down, having just heard that his pastor was killed. And a number of people rushed over to that. It was certainly a tragic and very mysterious event that we hope to learn more about in the coming days. Last night I had to cover the visitation of the pastor. Tonight's his funeral. Last night was the visitation. I didn't love my job last night. I had to stand outside the church and try to ask mourners if they wanted to talk about it. And, you know, an hour's worth, and finally one did. And then I could leave, but that was a long hour, and that's not a very glamorous part of broadcasting, so keep that in mind about this glamorous broadcasting world. Okay, thank you for indulging me on that. All right, switching gears now, I'm so glad to have our guest speaker here today. I've liked her since the day I met her. She's been in Sarasota now for 3 years, and I was jotting down a few ideas as to why I like Hayley. She's got a library card. I just love that she's, huh? There you go. During her dinner break, she went to the library and got her library card, and she reads. She's just a journalist, a reader, a thirst for knowledge, and I love that. I mean, we've all worked with colleagues and co-anchors who really, they weren't there to bring you the news was there to bring you them. Such a distinction, and Hayley is a journalist from the get-go, and that's wonderful about that. She's a great broadcaster, a natural talent. Very smooth. We've had a chance to co-anchor, and she just always nails it. Unless I write bad copy, and then you get a little tripped up. We had a thing the other night. I'll share this one. It's my fault, so I can embarrass myself. It was the CIA story about the torture. I'm trying to avoid that word right now. And I wrote the Senate Intelligence Agency, and it's a committee. And I didn't catch it, and she got to it, and I said, oh, you feel so lousy when you cause the anchor to trip up on something, but onward and upward. She's a great broadcaster, also a pro in the newsroom. She doesn't get involved in the gossip. She rises above it, keeps to herself, does her job, and I love that. We've all had coworkers sometimes who are very draining. She's not. And late at night, there's about 3 of us in the newsroom. The producer, the anchor, the reporter, 10:30 at night. We're just making the best of it until the news comes on at 11 o'clock. And the best of all, and you're going to like this, Jeff, she follows college football. She can tell you who is starting on Sunday for the Cleveland Browns. Do you know who it is? Johnny Football. Yes. Which leads me into Hayley's resume. She is a graduate of Texas A&M, where Johnny Manziel was the quarterback. She went to Medill School of Journalism at Northwestern. She began her career professionally in Tyler, Texas. I know you also had some business positions along the way as well, which we want to hear about. And she came to ABC7 3 years ago. But she's from Texas, but she can tell you all about Pittsburgh, Atlanta, Chicago, and now, thankfully, Sarasota. Folks, big hand for Hayley Wielgus. You got to run up.
Well, thank you to Ray for that wonderful introduction. I had no idea that he would be so complimentary of me, but thank you so much, Ray. We have fun as much as we can, as he said, in the newsroom at 10 o'clock at night. There is a very, very small staff, so we do get to know each other pretty well because it's just us. But as Ray mentioned, I am from Texas, and I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I've noticed recently, I don't know if it's with the advent of Twitter and celebrities and news people being more accessible to the public, but I've noticed that people like to hear about the people who are giving them the news. I think that may have changed because when I asked Ray, what am I supposed to talk about? I feel a little scared because I'm in front of this audience of people who are veterans, who know a lot more about the news business than I do, who have been in it for a lot longer, who have been through a lot more than I have. And he said, well, just talk about yourself. I thought, okay, well, am I that interesting to make a whole speech? And even my boss, Steve Sabato, our news director, I talked to him yesterday, and he said, well, what's your topic? And I said, me. And he said, okay, well, that's an interesting topic. I said, I hope that they think that. And it's funny because I've noticed as I've been here now for 3 years, most of the emails, some are, I hate your hair, I hate that dress you wore, why did you say that, blah, blah, blah. Some of those mean emails, but then a lot are about my personal life, which I think is interesting. The number one question I get asked by far is, when are you getting married? Whether that be at Target, whether that be at the mall, or an email or a Facebook comment, is when are you getting married? I cannot tell you how many times I've gotten that question. So I think people do want to know about the people who are sitting behind that desk. They want to feel like they know you a little bit. And I think that's definitely changed over the years. And now it's more about connecting with the audience. And I do try to share parts of myself on air. I figure that with this business, you don't really have that much of a private life. You have some, but I'm not 100% private. I like to share. I don't know how many times I've talked about my dogs on the air. People are probably even sick of me talking about my dogs, but I like to share those parts of me. And I like to think that I am on air like I am in person. I don't try to put on any kind of anchor persona. It's just me up there, basically. So I think that that's probably the biggest change throughout the years, as far as, of course, digital and all of that, but it's just the on-air performance part and how you connect with the audience. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Texas, and from a very young age, I wanted to get into journalism. I started off at age 4, probably, with a Fisher-Price tape recorder, doing my own little radio newscast. I would interview my mom and my sister, then I'd step outside and do a weather report, and that's kind of how I started. And I always wanted to be a writer. That was my number one goal. It still is my first love in life, is writing. So as I started to discover how hard it is to get a book published, and you don't just end up on the New York Times bestseller list and you're in Barnes & Noble the next day, it just doesn't happen like that. I started to think about other ways I could incorporate writing and public speaking into a job. I love to talk, so it's great to get paid to talk. It's kind of nice. So I started even in elementary school as our lead reporter for my Sugar Beet newspaper at my elementary school. I entered several Optimist oratorical competitions, and in high school I was the news editor of our newspaper. So it's just been something I've been doing my whole life. As a child, I would ask for history of news, television news books for Christmas, and when we went to the Olympics with my family in 1996 in Atlanta. And I went to CNN. We did the tour of CNN, of course. I mean, as a child who wants to go into news, this was, the most exciting part of the Olympics. Probably, and I do that little anchor thing where they let you read, and you put on a blazer and you read the news. We're still looking for that tape because everyone wants to see that tape, because I was like in 6th grade when this happened. So it's just been something I've always wanted to do. And I graduated, as Ray mentioned, from Texas A&M with a journalism degree. But here's an interesting story. I guess it was my sophomore year, one of our senior tenured professors quit, and in the journalism department. And I thought, this is very strange. So I went into the dean and asked, are you all doing something? Are you getting rid of the journalism program? Are you cutting back? Oh, no, we'll always have a journalism program. The very next semester, got a notice saying, come to this meeting in this large auditorium, all of the journalism students, and it was announced that they were getting rid of the journalism program and that we would be the last class to graduate with a journalism degree from Texas A&M, which was okay. I knew I wanted to go on to graduate school, but that's basically was a little unnerving when you're trying to graduate with a journalism degree, which I still did. I have a minor in Spanish, as we discussed earlier, and I studied abroad in Spain. So people always ask, as we were also discussing, one of the best pieces of advice, and I think it's just to be well-rounded. And as Ray said, I have been and lived in so many different parts of the country, and I think that those come up even when you're on the air and you're reading a story about a snowstorm in Chicago, and I can say, well, I've been through that. So I think it's interesting that people want to know those little tidbits that you know about life. So after I graduated from A&M, I did an internship with CNN Headline News, which was my first experience with the morning shift. I'm glad I did that because that ended up being my job here for 2.5 years on the morning show. And I requested, they liked you to move to different areas, experience radio and CNN International and all this. And I said, I want to stay, after I went through all that, I said, can I go back on the morning shift? And the lady said, this is the first intern who's ever asked to stay on the morning shift. And I said, well, the Atlanta traffic, I'm spending, 2-3 hours. My parents live north of Atlanta. I said, yeah, so I would like to, I would prefer to drive in here at 2 o'clock in the morning. Plus, I was getting to write stories for Robin Meade for her show. So my mom would watch and I'd say, I wrote this, this, and this, and watch, and she would write it down. So I thought that how can you beat that? Your writing is ending up on the air at CNN. So that was obviously, I did not expect that interning at CNN to actually be doing hands-on activities. So that was great. So then I went to Northwestern University to the Medill School of Journalism. There, everything was very hands-on, which a lot of people ask, do you really need a master's degree to do journalism? Well, of course you don't, but everything that I learned in my master's program is what I use today. We were out reporting in Chicago and in Washington, D.C., because part of the program is to finish your last quarter in D.C. and be a reporter for stations across the country. Your stories end up on the air at several different affiliate stations. So when I left Medill, I was ready to be on the air at a station that day. I mean, that's how prepared I was. I could shoot, edit, write, and know how to interview people out on the street. One of my dad always says, thanks to my mom for suggesting that I do a story on syringe exchange programs. I'm not sure if you're familiar. in Chicago. My mom's a nurse, so she said, I think this should be your final project for Medill in Chicago before you go to DC. So I would get on these syringe exchange buses where they, if you aren't familiar, they exchange needles and other drug paraphernalia and give you clean drug paraphernalia so that you don't transmit HIV, hepatitis C, other infections. This was probably still to this day my favorite story I've ever done. And my dad's like, you're letting Hayley go, your idea, she's going on these syringe exchange buses in these terrible neighborhoods of Chicago. But I learned a lot. So that's just one example of the story, type of story that we did while in school. So I think it's invaluable, the education that I got at Northwestern for sure. And so I'm still paying for it today, but it's still worth it. It's still worth it. So after Northwestern, I was at Bloomberg Television in Washington, D.C. for an entry-level sort of paid internship program. They have kind of a transitional, and I was there for several months before I took my first on-air job. And when I was at Bloomberg, I was behind the scenes. I was not on air. I was field producing interviews on the Hill, and a lot of senators and congressmen, and so that was a great experience. And Ray said, well, share some of the kind of funny stories that you've had. And it's very interesting working in Washington. And so I'm losing my train of thought on the story I was going to share, but I can get back to that. So after I left Washington, D.C., I took my first on-air job in Tyler, Texas with the CBS affiliate there. And I started as the Sunday morning anchor, and I had a co-anchor, and I was a reporter also on Sunday, so I reported 5 days a week and anchored that one show. And I started with a co-anchor and a producer. Well, I soon learned this was in the middle of the recession. I started my career in 2008. Not the time you want to be starting your career, except it gives you a lot of story ideas because everything is, how is XYZ related to the economy? Everything we could do about the economy. But it was a tough time to start a job. And so I found out that my co-anchor was being laid off. He had been in the business for many, many years. So he was laid off of our station, so I was single anchoring the show, which was fine. I still had a producer. Then I was told a few months later that our producer was being repurposed to another job and that I was going to have to produce and edit and anchor the show by myself, which was fine, but it was very interesting because I'd be like putting my mascara on and editing some video at the same time and then running out, and we had a lot of technical difficulties because we had moved to HD. And the transition wasn't all that smooth. So there were a lot of times you would send your video and it wouldn't send and it wouldn't send and it wouldn't send. So I'd be running out in the commercial break and I'd try to resend the video, I'd run back to the desk and So it was definitely a learning experience. And then when I actually re-signed my contract for another year and I got promoted to weekend evening anchor. And they said, we would like to, offer you this position. We're not going to give you any more money. And you also still have to do the Sunday morning show and the Saturday night show and the Sunday night show. And you still have to report. So I had a very crazy schedule, but I thought I need to take this job. I need to have more anchoring, for my future. So I did. I was reporting all day Saturday, anchoring Saturday night, sleeping for 2 hours, then going back and producing, editing, and anchoring the Sunday morning show, going back and sleeping for a few hours, and then doing the Sunday night show. And then I had Monday and Tuesday off, and I basically just had to veg out for 2 days, so I had to start reporting again on Wednesday. So that job was very stressful. And I think I called my mom crying maybe 3 times a week. I had a very tough boss, very tough. And as Ray mentioned about having the non-glamorous lifestyle, we had an intern with us at one point. It was probably 104. This was East Texas in July, and we had a crime in a neighborhood. I don't remember the exact crime, but we needed a neighbor to talk. So I can't tell you how many doors we knocked on. Please talk to us about how do you feel safe in your neighborhood? Over and over and over. And this intern, she's just like drenched in sweat. And I said, you sure you still want to do this job? Do you see what we have to do all day? You think it's glamorous? It's really not. So I called my news director. I said, I think we've knocked on 22 doors. No one will talk. He goes, keep knocking. So finally, we did get someone to talk. But I think it's that perseverance that you have to have. You have to want to keep getting the story. You have to want to keep going after the interview, finding the personal angle. And I find that missing sometimes in a lot of stories is they don't have the personal angle. And as tough as my boss was in that job, I'm glad that he really pushed that the story needs to be about somebody. The story needs to be about the person, not the county commissioner, not the city council, not the mayor. It needs to be about the person affected by the issue. So I definitely have carried that on through it all, reports I've done since. So I came here 3.5 years ago. As we were talking at this table, I had no connection to Florida. Usually people say, well, my grandmother took me here. I visited here as a kid. I really did not have a connection to Florida. And my agent asked me, is there anywhere you want to go or anywhere you don't want to go? And sorry to the table who already heard this story, but I said, in my head, I'm thinking, I do not want to go to Florida. I do not want to go to Florida. But I didn't say anything. I thought I need to just be open-minded, and so I was. And then the 2 offers I considered were here in Sarasota and then one in Jacksonville. And I think I took the better choice, and I'm glad to be here in Sarasota, although I do hate the drivers. Right, he did a tease, as we would say in news. He kind of teased this story. It's just a random tidbit, has nothing to do with journalism. But yesterday I was driving to work, and the commute at 2:30 p.m. is 10 times worse than the morning commute, because here in Sarasota, that's when everybody's like out and about and doing all their fun stuff, and I'm just trying to get to work. And there was I've had twice someone come head on at me, coming down the wrong side of the street. I've had that twice. This was different. I had a motor scooter, someone on a motorized wheelchair coming at me head on Central Avenue. Luckily, there was no one in the other lane, so I could swerve around. But I thought, only in Sarasota. So just a funny little story. So I came here, and my job here was morning and noon anchor. And I was anchoring 2 hours of the morning show solo and an hour of the noon show solo, and cut-ins for Good Morning America in between. I was talking nonstop for 5 days a week for 3+ hours a day, just me. And I kept thinking, do the viewers want to see this much of me? This could be, But I really enjoyed it. And I think, as a friend of mine also in news, who's also a morning anchor, told me that morning shows make you really good because you have to talk a lot, and you're getting a lot of repetition of anchoring, and there's a lot of chance for you to put your personality into it. And I think that's true. After the morning show, every other show seems like it goes by in a flash, because I was getting up at, as Ray knows, I was getting up at 2:30 in the morning. Anyone who's ever worked a morning show knows this, and getting to work by 4. And it's a tough thing, but if you can get through that, I think you can get through any shift in television. So I was doing mornings for about 2.5 years, and then our previous anchor, Lauren Dorsett, left to go back to California, and I was offered her job as a promotion, and then I had to sign a new contract, so I'll be here for several more years. And it's been a great transition to evenings. I'm still not on the same, I still can't get my schedule exactly right, but I'm sleeping a lot more than I was, that's for sure. So it's been great, and I've really, really enjoyed it. I'm also really involved in the community here. I do a lot of speaking engagements, but more than that, I do on my own time mostly a lot of volunteering. I'm involved with the Junior League of Sarasota, Designing Daughters, which is part of, at least for a few more months, part of Designing Women Boutique. I'm a mentor with Big Brothers Big Sisters. Of the Suncoast, I have a little sis who's in 5th grade at Wilkinson. Well, she's not so little. She's like this tall. And then also Special Olympics. I coach the Sarasota swim team for Special Olympics during the summer, their season goes from like June to October. It's a very long swim season, but we love it because, the more that they can get in there and practice, the better. And a couple others, rescue dog organizations, because I have 2 rescue dogs. Just about anything that I can get involved with. Also, my sorority alumni club here, and we do some literacy-based initiatives, volunteering in local schools. So there's a lot that I do out of work. There's always something going on, and I've noticed in Sarasota, I'm sure you have too, there's, 5 events every day of the week. So that's a whole nother full-time job to be, emceeing or even just attending events. So that's another aspect that it's really, I think, especially unique to Sarasota. Of course, every town has a lot of these events, but we here in Sarasota have so many of them. So that just kind of adds to it. But it's great because I don't get out to report as much as I did as a reporter, which I miss, but doing the community events allows me to still connect with the viewers. And that's one thing I miss about the morning and the noon show. We had so many people coming in for interviews, and that's how I got to meet some of the movers and shakers in the community. And I'm trying to get out more. I do health reporting. I recently just did a piece on the prescription drug pill mill crackdown here in Florida. And I'm hoping to follow up with that and do more health stories. And we're already talking about February sweeps, ratings period in February. Just talked to my news director about that last night. So we're already getting ready for more stories for that. But oh, and then I guess I'll touch on the engagement, because that seems to be everybody's question. I met my fiance, Max Winnitz, who is the weekend anchor and reporter at ABC7, on my interview for this job. No, he did not interview me. Everyone always asks me, did he interview you? I said, do you really think that I would start dating the person who interviewed me? I mean, I'm not going down that road. But he just happened to be the only person who spoke to me as I was wandering through the newsroom. And we just stayed in touch, and we ended up just talking a lot on Facebook, and I thought it was totally innocent. All my guy friends in Texas were like, yeah, totally innocent. Yeah. So we ended up, just becoming friends and then going to dinner, and now we're getting married in March. That's the answer to the question. We're getting married on March 7th. So, yeah. But I'd love to take any questions that you all might have. Yeah. I maintain a personal Facebook page, which is no longer a personal Facebook. I have more viewers as friends than I do, I think, real friends on there. So I maintain a personal Facebook page, a station fan page. I hate to call it that because it's really weird to ask people to be your fans. And, we have to update that as much as possible, but we're always teasing stories that are coming up for the newscast. But I find I'm addicted to Twitter, and I find that that's one of the best ways for me to reach viewers. And I have the same viewers who tweet me, almost every night about some story that we did, especially in the 11. I'm like, yes, people are watching the 11. This is not a good market for the 11 o'clock news because everyone goes to bed early. But I do have a few of my regulars, and they tweet me, and I even like it because my sports reporting skills when I have to do the sports segment, although I love to be watching sports, I'm not really skilled at reporting on sports. So the names, especially the hockey names, and I have one guy who will very kindly tell me, correct me if I get the hockey names wrong. So that's what I do with social media. But that's a constant. That's all day that we're updating social media and connecting with viewers. But I think it's great. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I agree 100%, because if I was not, while I do love the social media and the community events and all that, if I was not doing as much of that, I would definitely be doing a lot more in-depth reading on each story. And as Ray mentioned, I do love to read, and if it was up to me, I'd be reading deep into every story that we have that day. So I'm doing a lot of it even when I'm not at work. But yes, I agree. There's a lot to be done, although I have to give a lot of credit to our producers who do a lot and to help us to be, I do write a lot of the stories, especially for the 11 more than the 5 and the 6, but they do help us a lot with the big chunk of the newscast, so that does allow us to read some, as much as we can. But yeah, I agree. We can't get as deep into it. Thank you. It's very hot up here.
Let you on the rug, too.
Yeah.
We've got a very special prize. Don't go too far. For taking part and being our guest speaker, we've got a handsome Broadcasters Club.
Oh, nice.
There you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. Thank you, Hayley. That weekend anchor job was amazing. Mornings and evenings and mornings and evenings. Wow. Whenever I speak to career days, I always tell kids, you don't have to major in journalism these days. Major in history or business. Get a great internship, but become a generalist. I knew since I was 12, I was much older than you when I wanted to be in broadcasting. So I thought, I don't need to learn science. I don't need to learn French or social. I'm going to be a broadcaster. Well, mistake. Be a good generalist to be a good journalist, and as you know, everyone here knows that as well. So thank you, Hayley, and thank you, folks. We'll see you hopefully Thursday evening, January 8th, a nice reception at the Hyde Park Steakhouse. To our folks at METV, it's broadcastersclub.com. We'd love to have you there, open to the public. And our next time back here is February 13th, a little Valentine's luncheon. We're going to have a little couples incentive to bring a spouse or a loved one or both. Bad joke. We'll have Nick Walenda here for that wonderful occasion. Thank you, folks, for supporting the club.